Pantheism. This is the idea that God isn't sitting up in the clouds, wearing a crown, and keeping score of your mistakes. Nope, in pantheism, God is the universe itself. Every star, every tree, every drop of water, even you. It's all part of one giant divine reality. Basically, instead of looking up to find God, pantheism tells you to just look around. The philosopher Baruch Spinoza in the 1600s said God wasn't some person in the sky, but the very substance of existence itself. People thought that was heresy at the time and kicked him out of the synagogue. But centuries later, even Einstein said he believed in Spinoza's God, not a cosmic judge, but the elegance of nature and its laws. Basically, pantheism says three things. 1. God and the universe are the same thing. 2. God isn't far away but is present in every bit of creation. And 3. That means everything is connected. You, me, the stars, the ants in your backyard. It's all one big divine family. To a pantheist, walking in a forest or looking at the night sky isn't just pretty, it's a kind of spiritual experience. Pantheism also comes in different flavors. Naturalistic pantheists treat science as sacred, seeing God in physics, biology, and the laws of nature. Mystical pantheists dive into meditation or trance to feel one with the universe, and philosophical pantheists argue about God as the ground of all being, but not really a personality, more like the operating system of reality. Why do people find it appealing? Well, pantheism is a bridge between science and spirituality. You can be totally in awe of galaxies, black holes, and DNA, and still call that awe God. Panentheism. This is like pantheism's slightly more flexible cousin. While pantheism says God is the universe, panentheism goes, well, yes, but also more. In this view, the universe exists inside God, but God is still bigger than the universe. Imagine the cosmos as a fish swimming in the ocean of God. The fish is inside the water, but the water stretches way beyond what the fish can see. This idea pops up in a lot of traditions. Some branches of Hinduism describe Brahman as both immanent, present in everything, and transcendent, beyond it all. In Christianity, some mystics hinted at this too, suggesting that God is within creation but not limited to it. Even modern theologians use panentheism to explain how God could be involved in the world while still being greater than it. The core of panentheism is this: God is both near and far. On one hand, the divine is woven into every atom, every heartbeat, every moment. On the other hand, God also exists beyond time, space, and everything we can possibly imagine. It's like God has 1 foot in the universe and 1 foot outside of it. Why does this idea attract people? Because it feels like the best of both worlds. You don't have to choose between a God who is distant and unreachable or a God who is nothing more than the universe. In panentheism, you get a God who is deeply connected with you and everything around you, but also infinite, mysterious, and way beyond human understanding. The Tao. This is a concept from Taoism, and the crazy thing is, the moment you try to explain it, you've already missed it. The Tao is described as the way, the flow of the universe, the natural order that holds everything together. It's not a God sitting on a throne, it's more like the invisible rhythm behind life itself. Think of it as the current of a river. You can fight against it and exhaust yourself, or you can learn to flow with it and move effortlessly. In Taoist thought, the Tao can't really be captured in words or pinned down with definitions. The famous Tao Te Ching literally starts with, "The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao." In other words, if you think you've got it all figured out, you don't. The Tao is bigger than language, bigger than concepts, bigger than human categories. What makes the Tao fascinating is how it changes the way people see life. Instead of worshiping a personal God or following strict rules, Taoism encourages aligning yourself with the natural balance of the world. That's where the concept of Wu Wei comes in, non-action, or more accurately, effortless action. It doesn't mean doing nothing, it means moving in harmony with the flow, like a surfer catching the perfect wave instead of paddling against it. For many, the Tao is powerful because it strips away the need for an external deity or rigid belief system. It's a reminder that the sacred is in the ordinary, the changing seasons, the yin-yang dance of opposites, the quiet lessons of nature. In this way, the Tao isn't about finding God above the clouds, it's about noticing the divine order humming quietly beneath everything. Animism. This is one of the oldest ways humans have imagined the divine, and honestly, it's kind of beautiful. The basic idea is that everything around you is alive with spirit. Not just people or animals, but rivers, trees, mountains, even the wind in the air. To an animist, the world isn't just a backdrop for human life, it's full of personalities, powers, and presences that you live alongside. Think about it, before skyscrapers and smartphones, early humans lived close to nature. They saw the sun rise every day, storms roll in, rivers flood, and animals move with mysterious instincts. Animism gave them a way to understand it all. The thunder wasn't just noise, it was the voice of a spirit. The forest wasn't just wood, it was a community of beings with their own rules and moods. And this isn't just ancient history. Many indigenous cultures today still see the world through an animist lens. In Shinto, Japan's traditional religion, natural sites like waterfalls, rocks, or old trees are honored as sacred because they house kami, or spirits. In African traditional beliefs, ancestors and nature spirits are deeply woven into daily life. Even modern people sometimes slip into animist thinking, like when you curse at your laptop for deciding to freeze, or thank your car for getting you home safely. Allah. When people hear the word Allah, they usually think that's the Muslim God. And yes, Allah is the central name for God in Islam, but the thing is, Allah is just the Arabic word for God. Arabic-speaking Christians and Jews also use Allah to mean the one God. So Allah isn't a different deity altogether. It's the Islamic understanding of the same singular, all-powerful God worshipped in the Abrahamic traditions. In Islam, Allah is absolutely one, a concept called Tawheed. There are no partners, no equals, no splitting God into parts. That means ideas like the Trinity don't fit here. Allah is beyond comparison, beyond human form, and beyond imagination. The Quran even says, there is nothing like unto him. You can't draw Allah, you can't box him in, and you definitely can't shrink him down into a statue or idol. But while Allah is utterly transcendent, he's also described as deeply personal. Islam teaches 99 names of Allah, qualities like Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, Al-Adl, the just, Al-Alam, the all-knowing. These names give believers different lenses to understand the same infinite being. So Allah is both majestic and intimate, unreachable yet closer to you than your jugular vein. What makes Allah fascinating in the concept of God lineup is the balance between oneness and nearness. On the one hand, Allah is the creator of the universe, utterly unique and above all. On the other hand, Muslims pray directly to Allah 5 times a day, trusting that He hears and responds. There's no middleman required. It's one of the most uncompromising versions of monotheism in human history, the postmodern God. This isn't really a single being at all. It's more like an idea that got taken apart and rebuilt by philosophers with power tools. In postmodern thought, God isn't treated as an all-seeing creator in the sky. Instead, God is seen as a concept, a story, or even a cultural construction that changes depending on who's telling it. Think of it like this. In the Middle Ages, God was the unquestioned center of the universe. In the Enlightenment, philosophers argued about whether reason or science left room for God. But in postmodernism, the question isn't does God exist, so much as what do we even mean when we say God? Different cultures, different times, and even different individuals create their own versions of God, and none of them can claim the final word. Some postmodern thinkers go even further. They'll say that God is more like a symbol of meaning than an actual being. People project their hopes, fears, and values onto the idea of God, and in that sense, God reveals more about humans than about the divine. Others flip it around and suggest that God might be found in the gaps, the uncertainty, or even the silence, in the places where traditional definitions break down. What makes the postmodern God fascinating is that it's slippery. It doesn't give you a solid figure to worship, but it forces you to look at how humans construct belief and how much our image of God says about ourselves. To a postmodern thinker, God isn't a thunderbolt thrower or even a cosmic consciousness. God is a mirror, reflecting back the stories and meanings we weave as a society. The hidden God. This is the idea that God is real, but deliberately keeps himself out of sight. In fancy theology, this is sometimes called Deus absconditus, the God who hides. Unlike religions where God is obvious and constantly intervening, this concept says the divine is mysterious, withdrawn, and maybe even silent on purpose. You'll find the hidden God theme in a lot of traditions. In Christianity, Martin Luther talked about a God who sometimes conceals himself from human understanding, testing faith through silence. In Judaism, there's the idea of Hester Panim, or the hiding of God's face, when God seems absent in times of suffering. Even in modern philosophy, some argue that God hides so humans can have genuine freedom, because if God was always flashing neon signs of his presence, we'd have no choice but to believe. The hidden God can be comforting or unsettling, depending on how you look at it. On one hand, it explains why life often feels confusing or unfair. Maybe God's plan is bigger than what we can see. On the other hand, it leaves people wrestling with doubt. If God is real but hidden, how do we connect with him? How do we know he's really there? What makes this idea fascinating is that it sits right on the edge of faith and doubt. The hidden God isn't the loud, miracle-working deity who shows up in fire and thunder. Instead, he's the whisper behind the silence, the presence you can't quite pin down. For believers, it turns the search for God into a journey, one where mystery itself is part of the divine experience. Dualism. This is the idea that reality isn't ruled by just one force, but by two, usually locked in an eternal battle. Instead of one all-powerful God, dualism says the universe is split between light and darkness, good and evil, order and chaos. Life in this view is basically a cosmic tug-of-war. One of the oldest examples comes from Zoroastrianism, where two primal beings face off: Ahura Mazda, the god of truth and light, and Engra Mainyu, the spirit of lies and destruction. Humanity is caught in the middle, with every choice tipping the balance. Later, religions like Manichaeism took this idea to extremes, describing the world as a battlefield between forces of pure light and forces of darkness. What makes dualism so gripping is how it explains the problem of evil. If there's only one all-good God, then why does evil exist? Dualism offers a clean answer, because evil is its own power, just as real and ancient as good. An egregore. This is more like a collective mind that comes to life when enough people focus on the same idea. Think of it as a spiritual thought form, born out of shared belief, ritual, or emotion. When a group of people gather with the same intention, whether in religion, politics, or even pop culture, their combined energy can give rise to an invisible entity that feeds on their attention and in turn influences them. In occult traditions, secret societies like the Golden Dawn or Freemasons were said to have such entities, sustained by the loyalty and rituals of their members. The more belief and energy poured into it, the stronger it becomes, almost like a feedback loop of faith. The controversial twist is that this kind of creation doesn't have to be good. A collective obsession with fear, greed, or hate can just as easily give rise to something destructive that drives people toward chaos. In that sense, it blurs the line between psychology and spirituality. Are we just talking about group psychology, or does something more real come into being? So, unlike a transcendent God who creates the universe, an egregore is a created God, born out of human focus and imagination. And once it's strong enough, it can outlive the people who first made it, taking on a strange life of its own. Deism. Deism imagines God as the cosmic watchmaker, the ultimate engineer who designs the universe, winds it up, and then lets it run on its own. This view became especially popular in the Enlightenment era, when thinkers wanted a God that made sense alongside science and reason. Instead of miracles, divine voices, or scriptures full of interventions, deists believed God revealed himself through nature and natural laws. Picture it this way: God sets the rules of the game, gravity, motion, time, but doesn't interfere once the game begins. No parting of seas, no burning bushes, no daily management of human affairs. Everything that happens unfolds according to the system he put in place. That's why deists often rejected organized religion and supernatural claims, arguing that true worship of God is to study the order of creation itself. This idea was both revolutionary and controversial. On one hand, it kept God in the picture for people who couldn't accept atheism. On the other, it stripped away the intimacy and miracles that traditional believers cherished. Figures like Thomas Jefferson and Voltaire were known for deist leanings, seeing God less as a father you pray to and more as a principle of reason and order behind the cosmos. In short, deism is the vision of God as the architect but not the landlord, the one who built the universe but doesn't come knocking at your door. It's faith without dogma, a God of reason rather than revelation. Apophatic God. The apophatic view of God flips the script. Instead of describing what God is, it focuses on what God is not. This is called negative theology. The idea is simple but radical. God is so far beyond human understanding that every word we use falls short. If you say God is powerful, that still limits him, because our idea of power is too small. So instead, apophatic thinkers say God is not weak, not finite, not limited, and strip away every imperfect description. This approach shows up in early Christianity, the Desert Fathers, Pseudo-Dionysius, in Judaism, Kabbalistic thought, and in Islam, especially Sufi mysticism. For them, silence often speaks louder than words. By removing labels, you get closer to the mystery. It's like standing before an ocean at night. You can't map it out or name every wave, but you can still sense its vastness. Some call it the via negativa, the way of unsaying. Instead of piling on titles for God, King, Lord, Father, Light, apophatic theology points to God's unknowability. At the extreme, it suggests that every positive claim about God is false because human language is too limited. You can only encounter him through direct experience, contemplation, or silence. Of course, this makes it controversial. Critics argue, if you can't describe God, how can you know anything at all? But for apophatic mystics, that's exactly the point. The truest knowledge of God is realizing you don't know him. So, the Apophatic God is the hidden God beyond words, the mystery that no book, no doctrine, and no name can ever capture. Brahman. In Hindu philosophy, Brahman is the ultimate reality, the absolute foundation behind everything. Imagine it as the ocean of existence, while everything we see, gods, humans, animals, even galaxies, are just waves on its surface. Unlike gods with personalities and stories, Brahman isn't a someone. It's formless, timeless, infinite, and beyond all descriptions. The ancient Upanishads describe Brahman as Sat Chit Ananda, pure being, pure consciousness, and pure bliss. It doesn't change, it doesn't decay, and it isn't born or destroyed. Instead, it's the eternal ground of all that exists. Every living soul called Atman is considered at its core identical to Brahman. That's the famous Hindu teaching. Atman is Brahman. The spark inside you isn't separate from the universe. It's the universe recognizing itself. Now, because it's hard to grasp such an abstract concept, Hinduism offers different ways of relating to Brahman. In Advaita Vedanta, Brahman is seen as pure unity, with no distinctions at all. But in other traditions, Brahman shows itself in personal forms, like Vishnu, Shiva, or Devi, making it easier for humans to connect through devotion. So whether you think of it as formless infinity or as a personal deity, Brahman is always the ultimate source. Trinity. The Trinity is Christianity's unique way of describing God, one divine essence expressed in three distinct persons: the Father, the Son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. It's not three gods, and it's not one God with three different masks. Instead, it's a mysterious unity where all three are fully God, co-eternal and co-equal, yet distinct in their roles. The Father is often seen as the source, the creator who calls everything into being. The Son, Jesus, is God entering the world in human form to bring salvation and reveal divine love. The Holy Spirit is God's active presence, guiding, comforting, and empowering believers. Together they form one divine relationship of love. Early Christian thinkers explained it using the idea of perichoresis, a kind of eternal dance of love and unity between the three persons. Now, to human logic, the Trinity sounds like a paradox. How can one also be three? Over centuries, Christian theologians have wrestled with it using metaphors like water, liquid, ice, steam, or the sun, star, light, heat. But all of these fall short. The point is less about solving the math and more about capturing the idea that God is relationship itself, love, unity, and diversity all at once. So in simple terms, the Trinity is God as a community of love within himself, reaching out to creation. It's Christianity's way of saying that ultimate reality isn't just power or silence, it's living relational love at the heart of the universe. Dead God. The phrase God is dead comes from the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, and it's one of the most misunderstood ideas in philosophy. Nietzsche wasn't saying that a divine being literally lived and then died. Instead, he meant that the traditional idea of God, the Christian God, as the foundation of truth, morality, and meaning in Western society, had lost its power. For centuries, people looked to God as the anchor for right and wrong, purpose and order. But by the 19th century, science, rationalism, and secular thought were chipping away at that foundation. Nietzsche's dramatic phrase was like holding up a mirror to society and saying, look, we've stopped living as if God is real. We killed him through disbelief, through modern thinking, through replacing faith with reason. But Nietzsche didn't celebrate this as pure freedom. He also warned that without God, humanity risks falling into nihilism, a sense that nothing matters, no values, no purpose, just a void. His challenge was, if God is dead, what will we build in his place? Will we collapse into despair, or will we create new values, new meaning, and rise as overmen, Übermensch, who shape life with courage? So the dead God isn't about atheism being right or wrong. It's about the crisis that comes when the old framework of belief collapses. It forces the question, can humans live without leaning on a divine authority? And if so, what comes next? Modad. Picture the modad as the ultimate starting point of everything. In Neoplatonism, it's called the One, pure unity, totally beyond description. It doesn't have a face, a voice, or emotions. It's not a being like Zeus or Yahweh. It's more like the source code of reality itself, invisible, eternal, and unchanging. From the modad, reality flows outward in layers. First comes the realm of pure thought, nous, then the world's soul, and eventually the physical universe. Think of it like cosmic Wi-Fi. You can't see it, but it connects and powers everything. In Gnostic traditions, the modad is even more mysterious. It's the unknowable God beyond gods. It doesn't dirty its hands with the physical world, because matter is often seen as flawed or even a trap. Instead, the modad emanates spiritual beings called aeons, who live in the higher realms of light. Somewhere down the line, one of these emanations gives rise to the demiurge. the lower creator being responsible for shaping the material world, often portrayed as arrogant or ignorant. The Modad itself stays untouched, like a cosmic lighthouse, shining endlessly while others stumble around below. For seekers, the goal isn't worshiping the Modad in a traditional sense. It's about returning to it, reconnecting with that pure unity beyond illusion. It's the idea that, behind the noise of everyday life, there's a single perfect silence at the heart of existence. Yahweh. In the Hebrew Bible, Yahweh is the God of Israel, personal, covenantal, and deeply involved in history. Unlike abstract concepts like the monad or Brahman, Yahweh reveals himself through words, actions, and a relationship with his people. His name, often translated as I am who I am, from Exodus 3 verse 14, points to his eternal, self-existent nature, a God who simply is. Yahweh is both transcendent and immanent. On one hand, he is the creator of the heavens and the earth, beyond human control or imagination. On the other, he is the God who hears prayers, delivers the oppressed, and enters into covenant, first with Abraham, then with Moses and the people of Israel. He gives the Torah, a divine law meant to guide people into justice, holiness, and right relationship with him. Throughout Jewish history, Yahweh is portrayed with many facets: a mighty warrior defending his people, a judge demanding justice, a shepherd caring for his flock, and even a loving parent. But central to all of this is the idea of oneness, captured in the Shema prayer. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. This radical monotheism set ancient Israel apart from the surrounding polytheistic cultures. What makes Yahweh unique is his insistence on a covenant relationship, a two-way bond, where God promises faithfulness, and his people are called to loyalty and obedience. He's not just a distant deity, but a God of story, law, and history, shaping the destiny of a community through time. God as energy. This is the idea that the divine is the fundamental force that flows through everything. Instead of seeing God as separate from the universe, this concept sees God as the very power that makes the universe alive. In Eastern traditions, this often shows up as prana in Hinduism, or chi in Taoism and Chinese philosophy, the life force that animates all beings. In these views, the divine isn't something outside of us, but the energy pulsing through our breath, blood, and the natural world. In modern physics-inspired spirituality, people sometimes link this to the idea of energy fields, vibrations, or the fact that everything in the universe is made of energy at a fundamental level. God then is imagined as the infinite energy source behind all creation, the spark that ignited the Big Bang, and the current that keeps galaxies spinning and atoms moving. Some mystical Christian and Jewish thinkers have hinted at this too. In Kabbalah, for example, God's essence flows into creation as divine energy called Ein Sof Or, infinite light. Similarly, Christian mystics sometimes talk about the energies of God as distinct from God's essence, which humans can experience directly. The key point of this concept is that God isn't a being you pray to, God is the very current of existence itself, the dreamer God. This is the idea that existence itself is the dream of a divine being. In this view, reality isn't a physical machine, but a living dreamscape. We, the world, even time itself, all are unfolding within the imagination of God. You see this concept most vividly in Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime. In their traditions, ancestral beings dreamed the land, animals, and people into existence. The dream wasn't separate from reality, the dream is reality. What they dreamed became solid, and the world is still infused with that dream energy today. Philosophers and mystics also play with this idea. Some Hindu schools suggest that the universe is Maya, a kind of divine dream or illusion projected by Brahman. Even in modern thought, you'll hear people ask, what if we're all just characters in God's dream? The power of the dreamer God concept is that it flips perspective. Instead of seeing God as an architect building reality like a machine, God is an artist dreaming a story. And just like a dreamer inside their own dream, we're both part of the dream and expressions of the dreamer. The unmoved mover. This is one of the oldest philosophical ideas about God, coming from Aristotle in ancient Greece. Aristotle was trying to solve a big question. If everything in the universe is moving and changing, what started it all? He noticed that everything in motion is moved by something else. A ball rolls because you kicked it. You kick it because your muscles move. Your muscles move because your brain fired, and so on. But if you keep asking what caused that, you end up in an endless chain of causes. Aristotle didn't like that. He said there must be a first cause, something that sets everything into motion but isn't moved by anything else. That's the unmoved mover. It's eternal, changeless, and pure actuality, meaning it doesn't have any potential left to become something else. It just is. It doesn't push things around like a domino either. Instead, Aristotle described it more like a magnet. All things are drawn toward it as the ultimate source of motion and purpose. Later thinkers, especially in medieval philosophy and Christian theology, connected the unmoved mover with God. It became the foundation of the argument that there must be a necessary being at the root of existence, something that explains why there's a universe instead of nothing. Apatheism. Apatheism isn't about defining what God is, it's about whether the idea of God even matters. The word comes from blending apathy and theism. It describes the attitude of people who say, maybe God exists, maybe not, but either way it doesn't affect my life, so why care? Unlike atheism, which actively denies God's existence, or agnosticism, which says we can't know, apatheism shrugs at the whole debate. The question of God's existence is treated as irrelevant, unimportant, or simply not worth the energy. In philosophy, this has roots in modern secular thought. As science and humanism expanded, more people began living as if God doesn't intervene, not necessarily because they reject the divine, but because the question has no practical role in daily choices, morality, or meaning. In practice, apatheism shows up in a lot of people's lives today. Someone might say they believe in something or don't know what's out there, but they don't spend time worrying about heaven, hell, or divine commandments. The idea of God becomes background noise rather than a guiding principle. The significance of apatheism as a concept of God is that it represents a shift. God is not denied or affirmed, but rendered irrelevant. In this sense, God becomes more of a non-concept, a question filed away in the doesn't matter drawer of human thought. The all. This is a concept of God found most clearly in Hermetic philosophy, an ancient mystical tradition with roots in Egypt and Greece. It's not a God in the usual sense of a person, ruler, or skyfather. Instead, the all is described as the ultimate reality that is both everything and beyond everything. The Hermetic text, the Kybalion, famously says, the all is mind, the universe is mental. This means that the universe itself isn't just made of matter or energy, it's made of thought. Everything that exists is a thought within the infinite mind of the all. Just as a dreamer contains an entire dream world inside their head, the all contains the entire universe inside its consciousness. But the all is more than just the universe. It both is the universe and transcends it. Imagine an author writing a novel. The story, the characters, the world, all exist within the author's imagination. But the author is also outside the book. In the same way, the all expresses itself as galaxies, stars, humans, and every grain of sand, but still exists beyond them. Philosophically, this makes the all similar to concepts like pantheism and panentheism. But Hermetic thinkers add a special emphasis on mind and consciousness. The all isn't just stuff, it's intelligence, imagination, and creative thought. Another important feature of the all is that it's ineffable, beyond human categories. Hermetic writings warn that no matter what words you use, you'll never fully capture it. You can only describe it in hints, infinite, eternal, unchangeable, unknowable. Yet even though the all is beyond comprehension, it's also deeply intimate, because if everything is the all, then you and I are part of it too. The void. This is one of the most mysterious concepts of God, and it shows up in different ways across philosophy, mysticism, and religion. At its core, it's the idea that ultimate reality, or God, can be understood as emptiness. But this emptiness isn't just nothing, it's a fertile, creative nothingness, the source from which everything arises. In Buddhism, especially Mahayana traditions, the void is often described as shunyata, or emptiness. This doesn't mean life is meaningless. Instead, it means nothing exists independently or permanently. Everything is interdependent and constantly changing. The void here is a way of saying that reality has no fixed core, and yet it's exactly this openness that allows for compassion, wisdom, and awakening. Even in mystical Christianity and Apophatic theology, there's a similar thread, God as the divine darkness, or the nothingness beyond being. Here, God is beyond all names and categories, so the best way to describe him is through negation, as silence, as the void. Philosophers and modern thinkers have also played with this. Some existentialists see the void as the terrifying abyss of meaninglessness, while mystics flip it. The void is not despair, but ultimate freedom, because from nothing, anything can emerge. So in this concept, God is not a person, not a king, not even a cosmic mind. God is the void itself, the mysterious emptiness that paradoxically contains all potential. The Logos. If you've ever wondered, What connects raw chaos into an orderly universe? The ancient answer was something called the logos. In Greek philosophy, logos basically meant reason or word. It was the invisible logic holding everything together. The idea that the universe isn't random, but has a built-in pattern. Think of it like the source code running reality. The Stoics took it further. They said logos is a divine spark that flows through everything. It's why the stars move in order, why plants grow, why humans can think, because all of us are plugged into this cosmic reason. Then in Christianity, logos became even bigger. The Gospel of John opens with, "In the beginning was the Word, logos, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Here, logos is the divine word that actually creates the universe and later gets identified with Christ as the living embodiment of that divine order. So whether you see it as universal reason, divine speech, or the glue of the cosmos, logos is basically the concept that the universe runs on meaning, not madness. God as consciousness. This is the idea that the ultimate nature of reality isn't matter, energy, or even laws of physics. It's awareness itself. In this view, God isn't something you can see or measure, but the very fact that you can experience anything at all. In Hindu Vedanta, this is expressed as Brahman, pure consciousness. The individual self, called Atman, is seen as not separate from that cosmic awareness. The famous teaching Tattvam Ashi means you are that. Your inner awareness and the divine are one and the same. In Buddhist thought, especially in Mahayana, ultimate reality is sometimes described as luminous awareness, a clear, empty consciousness that underlies all experiences. It's not a self or a thing, but a boundless, knowing presence. Some modern philosophers, like those in panpsychism, argue that consciousness is fundamental. Everything, even atoms, has some element of mind-like awareness. The key point here is that consciousness doesn't come from matter. Instead, matter and the universe emerge within consciousness. God then is not just aware of the universe, God is the awareness in which the universe appears. For humans, this flips the script. When you look inward at your own awareness, you're not just seeing your personal mind. You're tapping into the same consciousness that holds galaxies, atoms, and all of existence.